In this video, we're going to review and look in a little more detail at the model binding process within ASP.NET MVC. The project that you're seeing here is the week 3 project that was used during the lecture videos for last week. So if you do not recognize this, you may just need to get caught up by watching the week 3 videos. Last week what we did is the final video, we basically set up a fairly simple project with a controller that did model binding or view model binding. So we have our user view model. Our user view model simply has first name, last name, email address, and password, all as string properties. And then we set up a view that contained a HTML form, and then we had input boxes or text fields that were named the same as our properties: first name, last name, email, and password, and a submit button. And the objective was for us to be able to go to that form, fill it out, hit submit, and then upon submit, we would actually see our input outputted onto the area below. Like so. Apparently I have a breakpoint set, so let me clear that. I'm going to hit continue, and there's our output. So what I want to examine in a little more detail is, how does this model binding work? How do we go from an HTML page back to our controller where we don't actually explicitly lay out those field names, but instead they're kind of tucked inside of this user view model class? So if we start back with our HTML page, we'll right click and we'll do a view page source. Now I'm using Google Chrome, and you'll see why in a moment, why this is kind of my preferred browser, but the functionality I'm going to show you is pretty common in most contemporary browsers. So whether you're using Internet Explorer, typically you'll see these features, I believe, in version 10 or 11 of Internet Explorer. Firefox has some of these features built in, and sometimes you need to use Firebug in order to get some of the functionality I'm going to show you. Chrome is actually built off of WebKit, which is the same engine that is used for the Mac Safari browser. So if you are familiar with that and utilizing the developer tools in Safari, you'll see some similarities. So right now I'm just kind of doing a quick view source on this page. There's nothing overly complex or fancy about this. We can see here's our form tag, and we're just submitting an action back to the root of the website, and we're doing a method post. We then have our label and input box. Input type is text, that makes it a text box, and the name is first name. Here's our last name box, email, and password, as well as our submit button. So again, these should not be anything unusual. This markup actually matches almost identically to the markup that was on our view. So we also again have our input type text. First name is the name of this text box, last name, email, password, and submit. The only thing that's kind of out of sorts is that we have this little bit of C# here that says using HTML.begin form, and that we'll be explained in more detail in a later lecture. But this gets processed into our HTML form tag. So if we look at our form and we examine what's happening here, we'll notice that we have these 4 boxes, and again, they have those specific names that we have assigned them. If we right click on this page and go to Inspect Element, this will bring up our developer tools in the Elements pane. I'm going to actually switch over to the Network pane, because what I want to see is I want to see the actual submit action details as what's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and start by filling this form out again. I'll put a different name in here. And then I'm going to hit submit. Now with my developer pane open, the developer tools will actually capture the postback information. I'll do this side by side, and if I hit submit, you'll see that the post occurs, and it says to localhost a post was done. Let me actually full screen this for ease of reading. On this network pane, you'll notice that we have information here, including the path of our request, the method used, in this case it was a post, the status that was received back from the server, which was a 200 OK, the content type that was returned. There is no initiator. The size of the content that was received, which was 875 bytes, and it took approximately 32 milliseconds to receive it. Now, if we click on this particular request, we'll get more specific details. Our pop-up includes a header tab, preview tab, response tab, and timing. What I'm mostly interested for this is the header tab. If we look down, we'll see the request details with some response information, but I want to look at this request header. You'll see that there's a lot of different options under here, including the type of data that the browser will accept, the encoding types that it will accept, languages that it supports, cache control details that are sent to the server, connection details, content length, the length of the content being sent, the type of content being sent, the host that we're sending to, and the referrer, and then we also have the user agent. You'll see in this section under form data that it shows first name, last name, email, and password. These are our input fields that we defined in our HTML document. You'll also notice that it says that first name equals Steve, last name Jobs, email steve@apple.com, and the password is password. This is a prettied up version of the form data that we submitted. If we click view source, we'll see the raw string that's actually passed during the HTTP request. So we see first name equals Steve and last name equals Jobs and email equals Steve, and then this @40 is the URL encoding for the @ symbol. So this is steve@apple.com and password equals password. This should look very similar to what you see in a query string, but the difference here is that this isn't actually being included as part of the query string. This is encoded and then sent as part of the HTTP request in the body of the request. So this data gets packaged up. It's then sent to the server. The server picks that up and then actually processes it using our home controller. And what happens there is that the string, first name equals Steve, last name equals Jobs, email equals steve@apple.com, and password equals password, begins to get parsed first at the @ symbols. So it ends up with the first name equals Steve as a key value pair, last name equals Jobs, another key value pair, email and password, much the same. It then looks through either our parameters or our view model and attempts to locate a match based on those. Now, this model binding process seems fairly straightforward when you're utilizing fields or input parameters that have names that match your user model or your view model, generally speaking. The model binding engine that's used for taking that string value from your postback and converting it into a usable model is much more sophisticated than we give it credit for just looking at this very simple example. It's also able to bind collections. It's also able to bind nested view models where you have a property that maybe is another class or another view model, or even a series of properties that are related to additional view models that are all nested together into a single unit. Now, coming up with the naming conventions in order to make that work successfully probably looks a little tedious and overwhelming, considering that we go through and we type in our input tags and then we have these names. Flat view models where they just have single properties are very easy to kind of guess and check and figure out how it works. But when you get into more sophisticated view model scenarios, just putting in these property names, well, frankly, it can be a little overwhelming, especially trying to kind of understand how the view model binding engine works and how it thinks. So instead, in our next video, we'll actually explain the use of the HTML helper that is available to us through the ASP.NET MVC engine, and how it helps us take our view models and generate our input tags and the like, utilizing our model properties versus having to manually guess each individual property.